Alien mother meets a single human father feeding her baby. What happens next shakes the entire gala. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved gracefully among humans, some towering, some small, some with wings that glowed softly. The hum of conversation mixed with soft music that floated across the large open space. It was a place where politics and wealth met, where races and species came to show off their best and to see the best of others. Among the crowd, most people and aliens were busy admiring the displays, talking, laughing, and taking notes of who was present. But one corner of the hall was different. In a quiet balcony, away from the glittering chaos, a human man sat holding a small alien infant. The man's name was Ethan Harper. He was not wealthy, nor was he a politician. He had no special title that mattered to most of the guests. He wore a simple dark suit that was clean but not flashy, and his hair was a little messy from the long day. But in his arms, cradled carefully, was a baby who was not his own species. The infant had skin that shifted colors like a calm wave, tiny delicate hands, and eyes large and shining in soft light. Ethan fed the baby with a bottle, tilting it just enough so the milk flowed smoothly, watching closely to make sure the infant didn't choke or spill. Every now and then the baby made a soft gurgling sound, reaching out to touch Ethan's hand. Ethan smiled each time and whispered softly, "There we go, good, little one, just relax." His voice was calm, low, and gentle, carrying a warmth that could reach across species. Most of the guests at the gala did not notice at first. They were too busy networking, comparing jewelry, exchanging polite words, and taking in the music and lights. But then, some of the aliens began to look in Ethan's direction. Their eyes widened slightly as they saw a human holding an alien baby with such care. Whispers started among them. One tall, slender alien with fins along its head leaned over to another and murmured, "Is that a human with a newborn?" "Yes," the other replied, its voice trembling slightly. "I have never seen a human handle an infant from our species like that. It is impressive." Ethan did not notice the whispers. He was focused on the baby, adjusting the bottle's angle and softly patting the infant's back. He had found this baby a few weeks ago, abandoned after a crash on a neutral space station. The baby's mother had disappeared, leaving no one to care for her. Ethan could have left the baby behind, but he couldn't. Humans, he believed, did not leave those in need. Not even if it was someone from another species. Not even if it was dangerous. The infant's eyes blinked slowly, studying Ethan's face. Tiny fingers clutched his suit jacket gently. Ethan chuckled quietly. "You like that, huh? You like being held. Don't worry, I've got you." He shifted slightly, keeping the baby close to his chest, feeling the warmth and the soft, uneven heartbeat that reminded him of his own daughter back on Earth, lost many years ago. Sometimes he thought about her. The memories were painful, but now, holding this alien infant, he felt a chance to do something right again, to give care where it was needed most. From across the hall, a figure stepped closer. She was taller than most humans. Her skin shimmered with soft gold tones, and her eyes reflected the light in ways that made them seem like twin stars. She was the baby's mother, Leora. She had been searching for her child ever since the crash, moving through the gala with controlled steps. Her species was not known for being emotional, but inside, her heart raced with fear, anger, and hope. The moment she saw Ethan holding the baby, she froze. Her hand instinctively went to her chest as if to steady her heart. This was not what she expected. She had prepared herself for confrontation, perhaps even violence if the human had harmed the baby. But instead, she saw gentleness. She saw care. She saw something she had never imagined possible from a human. The whispers in the crowd grew louder as some of the diplomats and guests started noticing the scene. "Is he feeding her correctly?" one asked, tilting its head. "It looks precise," another said. "I did not think humans could manage such fragile life forms." Leora stepped closer but kept a careful distance. She watched Ethan's every move. The baby nuzzled against his chest, closing her eyes slightly. Ethan hummed softly, rocking the infant gently. He spoke softly, not knowing that the alien mother was watching, studying him. "I won't let anyone hurt you," he murmured. "You're safe with me, always safe." The words were human, simple, and honest. They carried no hidden meaning, no arrogance, no expectation. The alien mother blinked slowly, trying to make sense of what she saw. Humans, she thought, were unpredictable. Some were cruel, some were selfish. But this human, this one, was different. There was no hint of danger, no trace of selfishness. He wasn't showing off. He wasn't trying to impress the gala or the species present. He was simply caring for her child, and that act alone spoke louder than any speech or display could. Ethan adjusted the bottle, glancing down at the baby's face. "Almost done, little one, almost done," he said, smiling softly. He had never been in such a crowded place with so many species around, yet he didn't feel afraid. He only felt responsibility. His own life had been quiet, ordinary, full of small jobs and routine. Yet here he was, holding a being from a species that could outthink him, outrun him, and possibly outfight him if provoked, and he felt no fear. Only care. Only duty. Leora took another careful step closer, her gaze locked on the human. Her hands twitched at her sides, unsure whether to reach out or hold back. The baby stirred, blinking up at Ethan and then toward her mother. Something clicked in her mind. This human wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. He was showing a strength that was not about violence or dominance. It was strength born from empathy, from responsibility, from a willingness to protect someone smaller and weaker than himself. The whispers in the crowd grew into murmurs. Guests nudged each other, pointing subtly, asking questions. "Why is the human allowed to hold the baby?" one asked, sounding both confused and impressed. "Who is he?" another whispered. "He looks ordinary, too ordinary." Ethan finished feeding the baby, gently removing the bottle and wiping her mouth. "All done," he said softly. The infant cooed and stretched tiny arms, yawning. Ethan held her close, rocking slightly. Leora's breathing became uneven. Her species did not often show fear or awe, but she felt both. She wanted to speak, to demand answers, to reclaim her child, but she could not tear her eyes away from the human who had cared for her infant with more patience than most of her kind could muster. Finally, after several long moments, Leora stepped fully into the balcony. She kept her posture formal but moved closer. Ethan noticed, lifting the baby gently and smiling politely. "Hello," he said softly. "Are you her mother?" Leora's voice was low, measured, but there was a tremor. "Yes," she said. "And who are you?" "I'm Ethan," he said simply. "I found her when she was alone. I made sure she was safe. That's all I've done." His eyes met hers, steady and honest. "She's safe with me." For the first time in what felt like hours, Leora allowed herself to step closer. She studied the baby in his arms, then back to him. His hands were gentle, his posture careful, his voice calm. There was no hint of danger, no trace of arrogance, just care. The murmurs in the gala grew louder. Guests had begun noticing the exchange, some moving closer to witness the interaction. Journalists adjusted their equipment, capturing images and transmitting them across the station. A human caring for an alien child. It was a story that could shake perceptions across systems. Leora realized that what she was witnessing was not just an act of kindness. It was proof that humans, often underestimated, were capable of something rare and precious: pure empathy. Ethan cradled the baby, rocking her gently. "She seems comfortable," he said quietly. "She trusts me." Leora felt a small swell of gratitude. It was strange, a foreign feeling for her species, but undeniable. She nodded slightly. "I can see that," she said softly. "I did not expect this from a human," Ethan smiled faintly. "Most people don't, but I've learned that everyone deserves care, no matter who or what they are. That's what I do." The baby stirred in his arms again, cooing softly, reaching toward Leora. Her heart, a heart that had been tense and cautious, softened further. She realized something in that moment. This human was not just a caretaker. He was something more, a bridge between worlds, a reminder that sometimes the simplest acts could change everything. And in the glittering hall, filled with aliens and humans and whispers, a quiet truth began to settle. The human had no power, no status, no wealth to command respect. Yet in his gentle hands, he held something far more valuable than any political title or shiny medal: trust, care, and the proof that humanity could shine even in the coldest corners of the galaxy. Leora stood still for a moment, watching Ethan carefully. The baby in his arms shifted slightly, letting out a soft gurgle, and Ethan smiled down at her. The gentle way he moved, the quiet voice he used, and the warmth in his eyes, it all felt different from what Leora had expected from a human. She had expected clumsiness, perhaps fear, maybe even harm. Instead, she saw skill, patience, and care. Her instincts, honed over many years to protect her child, told her to be cautious, but another part of her, a quiet, hesitant part, told her that this human deserved trust. The murmurs among the gala guests grew louder. Aliens who had been observing from a distance now edged closer, curious and anxious. Some whispered questions to each other in low tones, their voices carrying just enough for others nearby to hear. "Why is he allowed to hold the child?" one asked. "Is he trained?" another replied. "I've never seen a human interact with infants of our kind like this. It is precise, almost perfect." Ethan adjusted the baby slightly, making sure her tiny head was supported. "There we go," he said softly, all comfortable now. The baby blinked up at him, reaching out with small hands, and Ethan chuckled. "Yes, I know you're tired. You'll sleep soon." He gently rocked her, his eyes flicking to the crowd without noticing it fully. He could feel the tension in the air, but he didn't care. All that mattered was the baby's safety and comfort. Leora moved closer, her steps careful and deliberate. Each movement was measured, not only because of the crowd but because of instinct. She had never met a human like this before. Humans, in her experience, were unpredictable. Some were dangerous, some careless, some selfish. But this one, Ethan, was different. He was calm, focused, and entirely devoted to her child's well-being. Leora could feel the weight of her own heart beginning to shift. "Your name is Ethan?" she asked, her voice steady but soft. "Yes," he replied. "Ethan Harper. I found her after the crash. She was alone. I just made sure she was safe." Leora nodded slowly. Her gaze softened slightly as she looked at her child. "I did not expect a human to care for her like this," she admitted. I thought humans would not understand." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe not all humans," he said, "but some of us, we try, that's all I know. Care for those who need it. Doesn't matter if they're human or not." The baby stirred again, making soft cooing sounds. Ethan adjusted the bottle slightly, checking that she was comfortable, and whispered, "Almost done, little one. You're doing so well." The baby blinked slowly, reaching for Leora, and she felt a surge of emotion she couldn't name. Fear, relief, awe, gratitude, they all mixed together. Leora's mind raced as she observed him. She had trained her entire life to protect her child, to ensure no harm could come near her. Yet here was a human, an outsider, holding her infant with more care than most of her own species might show. His movements were gentle but confident. His touch was sure but soft. He was listening to the baby, watching her, responding to her needs without hesitation. It was an instinctive empathy that Leora had rarely seen. From the crowd, a group of younger aliens whispered among themselves, pointing subtly at Ethan. "Look at him," one said. "He does not look like a leader or a soldier or someone powerful, and yet he handles her perfectly, almost like he was born to care for this child." Another leaned closer. "I have never seen a human do this. They are fragile in most ways. But maybe we have underestimated them." Ethan finished feeding the baby and gently removed the bottle. He wiped her mouth with a soft cloth and held her close to his chest. All done, he said quietly. You did so well. I'm proud of you. The baby yawned and nestled into his shoulder, closing her eyes in trust. Leora felt a flicker of something she had never expected, relief. Perhaps her child was safe. Perhaps she could allow herself to step closer. She did. Slowly, cautiously, Leora approached him. Each step was deliberate, her body tense but controlled. She did not know what to expect. He could be dangerous, he could be weak, or he could be strong in ways she did not understand. Her eyes never left the baby as she came near, studying Ethan carefully. Ethan noticed her approach and smiled warmly. You must be her mother, he said. I'm glad you found her. Yes, Leora replied. Her voice was soft, steady, but there was a trace of emotion in it. I came as fast as I could. I saw you holding her. You are careful, Ethan nodded. I promised to keep her safe. That's all I did. There was a pause as Leora studied him. She could feel the eyes of the crowd on them, and the tension in the air was thick. Aliens whispered, humans stared, and some diplomats scribbled notes quickly. But for Leora, none of that mattered. All that mattered was this human who had cared for her child as if it were his own. The baby stirred slightly, reaching up toward Leora with tiny hands. Ethan adjusted his hold, letting the baby's mother see the connection. Leora hesitated for a moment, then extended a hand slowly, allowing the infant to touch her. The baby cooed and wriggled slightly, reaching toward Leora's face. Ethan smiled faintly. She recognizes you, he said softly. Leora nodded, her heart beginning to relax. Yes, she said, she does, and you have done well, better than I expected. Ethan shrugged gently. I just tried. I didn't want her to be alone. The simplicity of his words struck Leora. Humans often spoke plainly, without ceremony, without exaggeration. Yet there was truth in it. There was honesty, and it carried weight. She could feel it in every movement, every glance, every soft word he had spoken to her child. From the balcony edge, more guests began to notice the scene. Some took out small devices to record, others whispered among themselves. This human, he is extraordinary, one said. I cannot believe he does this without training. Another added, it is more than care. It is understanding, instinct, something rare even among our kind. Leora's eyes softened as she watched Ethan gently pat the baby's back. He had shifted slightly, rocking her, humming quietly to soothe her. The baby's eyes were half closed, her small fingers clutching his jacket. It was a scene that seemed to pause time itself. You are calm, Leora said finally, breaking the silence. Most humans I have seen, they are loud, quick, or nervous around infants. They do not know how to hold them properly. You are calm, Ethan chuckled softly. I have to be, he said. She depends on me. I have no choice but to stay calm and focused. I've learned that the hard way. Leora tilted her head slightly, curiosity mixed with admiration. You have learned this before, Ethan shook his head. No, I never had a baby before her, but I know that fear or rushing only makes things worse. You stay calm and you do your best. That's all anyone can do. The baby stirred again, stretching tiny arms, making soft sounds of contentment. Ethan adjusted her gently, making sure she was comfortable, and whispered softly. There we go. Good, good, almost asleep. The softness of the moment, the quiet intimacy between human and alien child, made Leora realize something important. She had spent so much time teaching herself to be vigilant, to be strong, to protect, but she had not expected to see trust in such a simple form. This human who had no claim, no authority, had earned her child's trust by nothing more than patience and care. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder, some in awe, some in disbelief. He's ordinary, one said. He has no titles, no wealth, no reputation. And yet, look at him. Look at how she rests in his arms. How is this possible? Leora ignored the whispers for a moment, focusing on the baby. She felt a strange sense of relief. Perhaps her child was in safe hands. Perhaps humans could be more than what she had assumed. She looked up at Ethan, noticing the quiet strength in his posture, the gentle determination in his gaze. You are patient," she said softly. "Most would not last as long as you have." Ethan shrugged slightly, smiling faintly. "I don't think of it like that," he said. "I just do what's needed. She's small, fragile, and she depends on someone. That's all I care about. The rest doesn't matter." Leora blinked slowly, absorbing the words. There was honesty there, unpretentious and simple. Something humans did well, she realized, was act without needing recognition, without needing reward. He had done what was right because it was right, not for glory or praise. The baby yawned widely, closing her eyes and resting against Ethan's chest. He adjusted her slightly, keeping her secure, and whispered softly. Leora watched, her heart easing with each gentle movement. She had expected fear, tension, and confrontation. Instead, she saw care, understanding, and quiet courage. For the first time that evening, Leora smiled faintly. It was small, hesitant, but genuine. She realized that she had underestimated humans. They could surprise, they could endure, they could protect in ways that were not flashy or loud. This one human, Ethan Harper, had proven it. The whispers around them continued, but they no longer mattered to Leora. What mattered was the trust, the care, and the quiet strength of a human who had chosen to protect her child. And as she stood there watching him, she knew that the story of this moment would spread, changing minds and hearts far beyond the walls of the gala. Leora took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The crowd of the gala continued around them, bright lights reflecting off polished floors and shimmering walls, but she barely noticed. Her focus was on Ethan and her child. She could feel the tension in her body, the nervousness of a mother meeting someone who had held her baby in her absence. But as she watched Ethan gently rock the infant, adjusting her tiny blanket, something within her softened. "Would you like to hold her?" Ethan asked, his voice quiet and calm, not forcing, just offering. Leora blinked. She hesitated. This was unusual for her species. They rarely allowed strangers to touch their young. Their children were private, protected, almost sacred. But she could see the trust in her child's eyes. The baby's small hands reached toward Ethan's chest and then toward Leora. The gesture was innocent, natural, trusting. Leora felt a tug in her chest she hadn't expected. She nodded slowly. Ethan adjusted his hold, shifting the baby slightly to make room, and said softly, "Take your time. She'll be fine." Leora stepped closer, her hands trembling slightly as she reached out. The baby stirred, opening her eyes, looking from Ethan to Leora. A soft gurgle escaped her lips, and she stretched her tiny arms toward her mother. Leora lifted the infant gently, feeling the weight, the warmth, the small heartbeat against her own chest. The sensation was overwhelming. She had been terrified of losing her child, but here she was, holding her again, and in the same moment she realized how much this human had cared for her. You have done well," Leora said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "I did not expect this." Ethan smiled faintly. "I didn't do much, I just made sure she was safe." "No," Leora said, shaking her head slightly. "You did more than that, you understood her. You cared for her when she had no one. That is rare among humans." Ethan's smile softened. "I don't think I'm that special. I just didn't want her to be alone." The baby yawned, curling into Leora's arms, and she adjusted her hold carefully. She looked back at Ethan, seeing the gentle confidence in his eyes. She could feel the sincerity radiating from him, the honesty of a man who did not seek praise but only acted out of compassion. The murmurs among the crowd grew louder. Diplomats, politicians, and wealthy guests began noticing that the human was not just holding the infant, but interacting with her naturally. Some whispered among themselves, curious, shocked, even envious. "He is extraordinary," one diplomat said quietly. "Look at how she rests in his arms. It is unlike anything I have seen." Another added, "He has no training, no special skills, and yet he handles her with care and understanding. I do not understand it." Ethan remained calm, ignoring the whispers. His attention never left the baby or Leora. He adjusted the blanket gently around the infant, making sure she was comfortable. "She seems sleepy now," he said softly. "Almost time for a nap." Leora nodded, feeling a strange mixture of relief and admiration. She had been prepared to confront him, to demand answers, perhaps even take her child by force if necessary. But now she realized that this human had done nothing wrong. Instead, he had shown her child kindness, patience, and protection. It was more than she had hoped for. The baby stirred slightly, opening her eyes once more. She reached out toward Ethan first, then toward Leora, her small fingers brushing against their hands. Leora smiled faintly, feeling the trust the baby had placed in both of them. It was a delicate balance, but one that Ethan had managed perfectly. You are patient," Leora said softly. "Most humans I have met, they would not last this long. They would grow frustrated, perhaps even harm her by accident." Ethan shook his head. "Not all humans are like that," he said. "But some of us, we try. We learn quickly when someone depends on us. That's all I did." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, some recording the scene on small devices, others whispering to their companions. Aliens who had been skeptical now watched with quiet awe. They had not expected a human to show such skill and care. And yet here he was, holding the child with gentle strength, earning the trust of both the infant and her mother. Leora stepped back slightly, giving Ethan room. She watched him, studying every movement. His calmness, his focus, his patience, it was all natural. He had no training for alien infants, no preparation, and yet he handled her perfectly. It was remarkable. She had underestimated humans, she realized. They were not just fragile, impulsive, or selfish. They were capable of understanding, compassion, and quiet strength. "Your species," Leora said softly, her voice hesitant. "I did not expect this from a human." Ethan shrugged gently. "Maybe not all humans," he said. "But some of us try to do what is right. That's enough for me." The baby yawned again, curling into Leora's arms, and she adjusted her hold carefully. She looked back at Ethan, seeing the gentle confidence in his eyes. She could feel the sincerity radiating from him, the honesty of a man who did not seek praise but only acted out of compassion. Suddenly, the crowd's attention shifted more broadly. Several journalists moved closer, sensing a story. Cameras clicked, small devices recorded, and whispers grew into low murmurs. A reporter asked another, "Who is he? He has no official title, no wealth, no influence. And yet, he has handled an alien infant with such ease. It is extraordinary." Ethan noticed some of the attention, but he did not flinch. He adjusted the baby, humming softly, focusing on her comfort. He had learned long ago that fear of others' opinions was useless. What mattered was the child's safety and trust. Leora watched him, feeling a mixture of admiration and something else, something she could not name. Respect, yes, but also a kind of amazement. Humans could be unpredictable, but in this moment she saw one who had acted not out of instinct alone, but with deliberate care and thought. He had chosen to protect her child without expectation, without ceremony, without reward. It was simple, yet powerful. The baby stirred, cooing softly, and Ethan whispered gently, "Almost asleep, you're safe, all safe." Leora felt a lump in her throat. She had been tense, ready to challenge him, but now she could see that she had no need. He had proven himself in action, and his actions spoke louder than words ever could. The whispers among the crowd continued, but they seemed distant to Leora. She focused on her child and the human who had cared for her so naturally. She realized something important. This was not just about safety. This was about trust, about seeing someone act with pure intent and recognizing it, even across species. "You," Leora said softly, "you have shown me something I did not expect. That humans can be more than I thought." Ethan shook his head slightly. "I am just a man who cares," he said. "That's all. Anyone else would do the same if they were in my place." Leora studied him, feeling the truth in his words. It was rare to find someone who acted with such honesty. Many in her species were careful, calculating, and reserved. Many humans, she had assumed, were reckless or self-centered. But here was one who had acted from instinct and empathy, and the result was undeniable. The baby yawned again, curling into Leora's arms, and she adjusted her hold carefully. She looked back at Ethan, seeing the gentle confidence in his eyes. She could feel the sincerity radiating from him, the honesty of a man who did not seek praise but only acted out of compassion. From across the hall, some diplomats began to whisper more openly. "Perhaps we have been wrong about humans," one said. "They are capable of care, understanding, empathy, even in ways we did not imagine." Another nodded slowly. "It seems this one human has shown us what we have underestimated. Perhaps we need to reconsider how we see them." Ethan continued holding the baby, humming softly, rocking her gently. The moment was quiet, but it was full of significance. It was a demonstration of simple truth. Sometimes, the smallest acts of care could change perceptions, build trust, and inspire those who witnessed it. Leora watched him, feeling a sense of relief, admiration, and something else she could not name. The human had earned her respect and her trust, and more importantly, he had earned her child's trust. It was a rare achievement and one that would not be forgotten. The gala continued around them, full of lights, music, and whispers, but in that small balcony corner, something extraordinary had happened. A human had held an alien child, cared for her, and earned the trust of both mother and infant. And in doing so, he had shown the galaxy something important, that empathy, care, and honesty could transcend species, status, and expectation. Leora stepped fully closer, her hand still steady but her heart lighter. She could feel the weight of her initial fear lifting. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to relax, to let go of worry, and to acknowledge the truth she had been resisting. Ethan Harper had done more than keep her child safe. He had shown her that humans could be heroes in ways she had never imagined. The baby stirred one last time, blinking sleepily, reaching for Ethan, then curling back into Leora's arms. Ethan smiled faintly, his eyes calm, steady, full of quiet strength. Leora met his gaze, and in that moment they understood each other. Words were not necessary. The trust, care, and respect they shared were enough. Leora held her child close, feeling the slow and steady breathing against her chest. The baby was calm now, almost asleep, her small fingers resting lightly against Leora's shoulder. Ethan stood nearby, giving her space, his hands relaxed at his sides. The moment between them was quiet, but the rest of the gala was no longer quiet at all. People had begun to notice. At first, it was just a few glances. Then more eyes turned toward the balcony. Conversation stopped halfway through sentences. Music still played softly in the background, but attention slowly shifted. A human and an alien mother standing together, sharing a moment over an infant, was not something anyone expected to see at a gala meant for power and status. Whispers moved through the crowd like a wave. "That is the human," someone said softly. "The one who fed the child," another replied. "I heard he found the baby alone and kept her alive," a third voice added. Cameras were raised. Small floating devices hovered closer, recording from different angles. Some guests frowned, unsure if this scene was proper. Others watched with open interest. A few looked uncomfortable, as if something they believed was being quietly challenged. Leora noticed the attention and stiffened slightly. Her species was not used to public displays like this, especially involving their young. She adjusted her grip on the baby, protective but calm. Ethan noticed the change immediately. "You don't have to stay here," he said quietly. "We can move somewhere quieter if you want." Leora looked at him, surprised. He was offering her a way out, not trying to hold on to the moment or the attention. That mattered to her. She shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "It is fine. Let them see." Ethan nodded. "All right." The baby stirred slightly, making a soft sound, then settled again. Leora gently rocked her, her movements smooth and careful. The sight of it drew even more attention. Some of the aliens watching exchanged looks of surprise. To them, humans were loud, fast, and often careless. Yet this human had shown patience and restraint, and now stood quietly while the mother held her child. A tall alien official stepped forward from the crowd. His robes marked him as someone of authority. His eyes moved from Leora to Ethan and then to the child. "This gathering is meant to be peaceful," the official said slowly, "but this situation is unusual." Ethan straightened slightly, though his tone stayed calm. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," he said. "I was just taking care of her." The official studied him for a moment. "You are human," he said. "Yes," Ethan replied simply. "And the child is not," the official continued. "No," Ethan said, "but she needed help." There was a pause. The official looked at Leora. "Is this true?" he asked. Leora met his gaze without fear. "Yes," she said. "My child was alone after the accident. This human found her. He fed her. He protected her. She is alive because of him." That single sentence moved through the crowd like a spark. Alive because of him. More whispers followed, louder now. "He saved her. A human saved her." "That changes things." The official nodded slowly. "Then no rules have been broken," he said. "If anything, a debt has been created." Some of the tension in the air eased, but the attention did not fade. In fact, it grew stronger. Reporters moved closer. One of them spoke up. "Sir," a voice called out, "why did you do it? Why help an alien child when you had no obligation?" Ethan hesitated for a moment. He was not used to speaking in front of crowds. He glanced at the baby, then at Leora, then back at the group. "She was alone," he said simply. That was enough. There was no dramatic pause, no long explanation, just those few words. The simplicity of the answer seemed to hit harder than any speech could have. Another voice asked, "Weren't you afraid? Your species and hers are very different." Ethan nodded slightly. "Of course I was, but fear doesn't matter when someone needs help." Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others looked thoughtful. A few nodded quietly, as if remembering something they had forgotten. Leora watched Ethan closely. He was not trying to impress anyone. He was not defending himself or making excuses. He spoke as if the answer was obvious, as if there had never been another choice. The baby stirred again, opening her eyes briefly. She looked around, then focused on Ethan. Her small hand reached out toward him. Without thinking, Ethan stepped closer and gently touched her fingers. The crowd reacted instantly. Some gasped softly. "She knows him. She trusts him." That child trusts a human. Leora felt it too. The bond between Ethan and her child was real. It was not ownership, not control. It was familiarity and safety. That mattered more than anything else. "You may hold her again if you wish," Leora said quietly. Ethan looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she replied. "She is calm with you." Carefully, slowly, Leora passed the baby back into Ethan's arms. He accepted her with the same gentle confidence as before, supporting her head, adjusting his grip, rocking slightly. The baby relaxed almost instantly. That moment broke something open in the room. The gala was no longer about status or power. It was about what everyone was seeing with their own eyes. A human, standing among aliens far more advanced in many ways, holding an alien child with care and respect. A diplomat from another species stepped forward. "We have long debated whether humans could be trusted with responsibility beyond their own kind," she said. "This answers that question better than any treaty." Others murmured in agreement. Another official spoke. "Perhaps we have judged them only by their weapons and their wars. Perhaps we forgot to look at how they treat the helpless." Ethan heard none of this clearly. He was focused on the baby, who had begun to drift back to sleep. He hummed softly, a simple tune, something his mother used to hum when he was young. The sound was low and steady. Leora watched him, her thoughts heavy but clear. This human had not just saved her child. He had changed how others saw his entire species. She stepped forward again, facing the crowd. "My people value strength," she said. We value survival, but tonight this human showed us another kind of strength, not loud, not violent, quiet, steady, protective. She paused, then added, "We will remember this." That promise carried weight. The crowd grew quiet. Even the music seemed distant now. Ethan finally looked up, realizing the attention fully. He shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't mean to make a statement," he said. "I just did what I thought was right." "That," Leora said gently, "is exactly why it matters." A few humans in the crowd exchanged glances. Some looked proud, others looked surprised. Humans were often seen as reckless or aggressive, but here was proof of something else entirely. A representative from the station approached. "The council will want to acknowledge this act," she said. "Formally." Ethan frowned slightly. "That's not necessary." "It is," she replied. "Not for you, for what it represents." Ethan did not argue further. He simply nodded. The baby shifted again, her eyes half open. Ethan smiled down at her. "You're causing quite a stir," he whispered softly. Leora stepped closer, standing beside him now, not apart. The image of them together was recorded from every angle. It would spread far beyond the station by morning. "You may have changed more than you realize," Leora said quietly. Ethan shrugged. "I don't think about things like that." She looked at him with something close to wonder. "Humans rarely do," she said. "And yet they change things anyway." Around them, the gala slowly resumed, but it was different now. Conversations had changed. People spoke in lower tones. Some laughed less. Some thought more. What had started as a quiet act of care had become something larger. Not because Ethan wanted it to be, but because others had seen the truth in it. The baby finally fell fully asleep, her breathing slow and even. Ethan held her securely as if she weighed nothing at all. Leora placed a hand lightly on his arm. "Thank you," she said. He met her gaze and nodded once. "You're welcome." In that moment, under the soft lights of the gala, surrounded by beings from across the stars, a simple truth had been revealed. Humanity's greatest strength was not its ships or its weapons. It was the choice to care. And everyone there knew they had just witnessed something that would not be forgotten. The gala was slowly winding down, though the energy in the hall was still high. Many guests lingered, whispering in small groups, replaying what they had seen over and over in their minds. Some had recorded the event, others had watched it unfold live, and everyone was talking about the human who had held and cared for an alien infant in a way that no one had expected. Ethan Harper still held the sleeping baby in his arms. She rested peacefully against his chest, her tiny hands curling against his jacket. He moved carefully, rocking her slightly, humming the same soft tune he had started hours ago. He had grown used to the quiet weight of her, to the rhythm of her small breathing. His mind was calm, even though the gala behind him buzzed with conversation and curiosity. Leora stood beside him, her hand lightly resting on the baby's small back. She had spent hours watching him, studying him, realizing more and more that this human had a rare kind of strength, one that was quiet, steady, and pure. She had expected a stranger to be clumsy or fearful or careless. Instead, she had found someone who moved through her child's needs with care, patience, and understanding. "Will she sleep long?" Leora asked softly. "She should," Ethan said quietly. "She's comfortable now. I've made sure she's warm, that she's fed, that she feels safe." "That's all that matters," Leora nodded. She looked around at the other guests, many of whom were still watching. Some had left, some were whispering among themselves, and a few had approached cautiously to get a better view. She realized that what had begun as a private act between a human and her child had become something much larger. It had become a symbol. "People will talk about this," she said. Ethan shrugged gently. "I don't think about that. I just did what I thought was right." "That's why it matters," Leora said softly. "Because you didn't care about the attention. You didn't do it for recognition. You did it because it was needed. That will be remembered." The baby shifted slightly in Ethan's arms, murmuring in her sleep. He adjusted her gently, supporting her head, and whispered softly, "All safe. Nothing to worry about." Across the hall, some of the reporters and diplomats had gathered in small groups. They were discussing the event with excitement and disbelief. One reporter whispered to another, "This is going to change a lot of opinions. They've always underestimated humans, but that man, he showed something different." A diplomat shook her head slowly. "Yes. They have been judged for their violence, their impulsiveness, their stubbornness. But this shows patience, empathy, and careful thought, and it is undeniable." Leora turned slightly to look at Ethan. He had not moved from his spot. He had not changed his demeanor. He remained calm, focused only on the baby in his arms. That quiet dedication, that simplicity of purpose, was exactly what had made such an impact on everyone around them. "You have done more than just keep her alive," Leora said softly, almost to herself. "You have shown what your species is capable of. They will see it now. They cannot ignore it." Ethan looked at her, his expression steady and honest. "I don't know if they will see it the way you hope. I just did what I thought was right." "That is enough," Leora replied. "It is enough for them to start seeing differently. Sometimes one simple act is stronger than 1,000 words or decrees." The baby stirred again, slowly opening her eyes. She blinked at Ethan, then at Leora. Her small hands reached toward them, one toward each. Ethan smiled softly, and Leora bent slightly to let the baby touch her fingers. The connection between them was simple, natural, and undeniable. Around the hall, more guests began to murmur, their whispers turning into soft discussions. Some approached cautiously, asking questions, curious but respectful. A few asked to speak to Ethan, wanting to understand how he had managed to care for the infant so perfectly. Others simply watched, realizing that they were witnessing something unique. One of the diplomats stepped forward, his voice quiet but firm. "Sir," he said to Ethan, "you have done more than anyone expected. Your actions tonight will be remembered across the galaxy, not just for your courage, but for your patience, your care, and your understanding. You have earned respect in ways words cannot fully describe." Ethan blinked, unaccustomed to praise. I didn't do it for that," he said softly. "I just wanted her to be safe, that's all." "Exactly," Leora said gently. "And that is what makes it meaningful. You did not seek reward. You did not seek recognition. You acted out of care, and that is what will be remembered." The baby yawned again, curling back into Ethan's arms. He adjusted her gently, humming softly. Leora watched him, her thoughts full of gratitude and something more, something she could not name. This human had changed not only her child's life, but her own understanding of humans. "You are extraordinary," she said softly, almost a whisper. Ethan smiled faintly. "I'm just a man," he said. "I did what anyone should have done." "Perhaps," Leora said, "but not everyone would. That is why you matter. That is why this night will be remembered." The murmurs around them continued, but the tone had shifted. What had started as curiosity had grown into admiration. Humans were often underestimated, dismissed, or even feared. But tonight, through the simple act of caring for a child, one human had proven a different truth. Strength was not only measured in power or weapons. Strength could also be measured in patience, in empathy, in the ability to protect someone weaker than yourself. From across the hall, more guests approached cautiously. Some wanted to speak, some wanted to watch. One older alien, his skin a deep violet with ridges along his head, stepped forward. "I have seen many humans," he said slowly. "I have judged them harshly. But tonight, you have shown me something different, something I did not expect. I will not forget this." Ethan nodded politely, shifting the baby slightly to make her more comfortable. "I'm glad she's safe," he said simply. "And she is," the older alien replied. "Because of you." Leora felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had expected fear, tension, maybe even anger at first. But now she felt something else: relief, gratitude, and an understanding that her child was in good hands, even for the short time they had spent together. The baby stirred again, blinking sleepily, and reached out toward Ethan. He smiled down at her. "It's okay," he whispered softly. "You're safe, nothing to worry about." Across the hall, whispers grew into conversations. People were talking about what they had seen, about the human who had cared for an alien child, about the patience, the care, the quiet strength he had shown. They were discussing what it meant, how it reflected on humans, and what it could mean for the future. Leora looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with something close to awe. "You have done more than feed her," she said. "You have shown the galaxy what humans are capable of. They will not forget this." Ethan shook his head softly. "I did not do it for them," he said quietly. "I did it for her, that is all." "And that is why it matters most," Leora replied. "Because the act itself is honest, pure, and true. That is what people will remember, whether they admit it or not." The baby shifted slightly, curling into Ethan's arms, her breathing calm and even. Leora placed a hand lightly on his arm, a gesture of gratitude and acknowledgement. He looked at her, meeting her gaze steadily. No words were needed. They understood each other perfectly. The gala continued, but something fundamental had changed. The whispers, the gazes, the soft murmurs, they were no longer just about politics or status. They were about what they had seen. A human had acted with care, with empathy, with patience. And that simple act had shaken assumptions, altered perceptions, and left an impression that would not fade. As the night drew on, the crowd began to disperse slowly. Guests lingered a little longer, some speaking in low voices, some still looking toward Ethan and Leora. Cameras and devices recorded the final moments, capturing the quiet scene of a human holding an alien child, both mother and child at peace, and the subtle bond forming between them. Leora stepped closer, placing her hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." Ethan looked down at her, then at the baby, and smiled faintly. "I just did what I thought was right," he said. "Nothing more." "That is enough," Leora said. "That is everything." In that quiet balcony corner, the lights of the gala glimmered, reflecting off walls, floors, and the many faces still watching. But more importantly, it reflected a truth that few could deny. Humanity's greatest power was not in their strength, their weapons, or their technology. It was in their ability to care. And tonight, everyone had seen it. The baby yawned once more, nestling comfortably against Ethan. He hummed softly, rocking her gently. Leora watched, a smile forming on her lips. She knew that her child was safe, and that this human had changed something in the hearts and minds of everyone present. The gala, meant to showcase wealth and status, had instead revealed something far more important. It had shown that courage could be quiet, that strength could be gentle, and that humanity, ordinary, patient, and caring, could shine in ways that were impossible to ignore. As the night ended, Ethan and Leora stepped away from the crowd, walking slowly together, the baby cradled safely in his arms. Behind them, the whispers and stories would continue to spread, carrying the message far beyond the gala's walls. For the first time in weeks, Leora felt calm. Her child was safe. The human who had cared for her had earned respect, admiration, and a place in her memory that would never fade. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that this moment, this simple act of care, would echo across the galaxy. Humans, she realized, were capable of greatness not through power, but through compassion, and that truth would never be forgotten.